Right, today I'm talking to Bet Huws. Hi, Bet.
Hi,
How are you? You good?
I'm okay, thanks. Yeah, and yourself?
Yes, good. Good, thank you. Yes, it's quite got a nice comfy chair here. This is all good, and a cup of tea, so well sorted. Okay, so look, traditional first question. What do you do?
Um, I do many things, Vic, like many people, yeah. But one of the things that gives me the greatest enjoyment is making things happen.
Yes. And what sort of things are they then, Bet?
Well, let me plug something that's coming up real soon,
Yeah,
which is a day to celebrate Welsh folklore and magic.
cool. That sounds really interesting. Because you're sort of based where in North Wales.
Yeah, I'm at the foot of Yr Wyddfa, aka Snowdon.
Wow. So is it where's it going to be?
It's going to be held in Bethesda in Neuadd Ogwen. Neuadd Ogwen is a really interesting venue because they get all sorts coming there. This weekend, I'm going to go there to see Puddle's Pity Party, and I'm really looking forward to that.
Right. Okay. What's that then?
Puddle's Pity Party is one guy, really. He's a 7-foot clown and he's got a golden voice.
Oh,
Absolutely brilliant. So it'd be interesting to see a persona rather than a singer, if you know what I mean.
yeah.
And
I know what you mean.
I've
Well,
watched some clips on YouTube and he looks really, really interesting. Yeah.
I like what you say there about seeing a persona because I think this actually goes to the heart of anybody who performs because it's not really them, it's their persona in a way, if you see what I mean. Because this is one of the issues I have. Well, it's not an issue. When I'm teaching people, one of the things that I keep coming across is this the way that people think about how things work, particularly when it comes to sort of like art. Like there is a way to do something, like there is a career path and all this sort of things. And I have to sort of say to them, well, there isn't. It probably is something a bit weirder than that. And I think you were saying about the persona thing. That's really interesting because what if you think about great artists and great musicians, particularly, it's the persona um, that you've just dropped out there. But you
Yeah.
still there? Yeah. So it's the persona. It's interesting you say that because that sort of hits the nail on the head.
Yeah. We all play roles in different things that we're doing in our lives, and we all have different personas in that respect. But to have an obvious persona entertaining you, I think that is magical in itself, because
Yes,
they take you to somewhere else, don't they? Because
yes, they do.
that's not real. A 7-foot clown is not real. So you go there with the expectation of going somewhere else with them, yeah,
Yes,
on their journey.
yes, yeah. That's brilliant. See, this is one of the things that I think this whole idea of like re-enchanting uh, the world, re-enchanting imagination. I mean, let's face it. I mean, there's lots of really amazing things happening now. I mean, especially with things like film and what we experience when we see film, particularly now. I mean, it's quite incredible. But in people's ordinary lives, it's sort of odd because it's like we well, I think we're getting it. We're beginning to sort of re-engage with that now. But certainly, we've got to a point for a lot of people where there is no magic. There's nothing mysterious in imaginary for the mainstay of people. Even when I'm talking to kids, teaching children, a lot of
That's
them have lost that sort of spark of possibility.
why do you think that is, Vic?
I think it's just the way that, well, partly the education system goes.
Also, this constant feeding through monitors for entertainment, um, and less time maybe to discover it for yourself.
Yes.
I've recently been reading a book about the science of awe, yeah,
Oh,
AWE,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
because I thought, okay, let's see what comes up with this. And also it's for people to find awe and magic in the simplest everyday things. Yeah. To really realize what's happening at a micro level that is totally wonderful and magical.
Yes, it is. See, you very kindly showed me a copy of my book at the beginning. Um, One of the things that with NLP is that if your map is limited, the way that you see the world is very, very rational. You're not going to see the things that fall outside of the paradigm of your map. And this is what I think is really important about the imaginal aspect of ourselves, is that as soon as we spark that off, you start to discover other things. And it starts to become like a domino effect. Um, and because you have to reconstitute your map, if you sort of mean, as soon as you start to discover things. And this is why I've always been interested in magical thinking, otherworldly stuff, because for me, it dovetails directly into art. And how many artists out there do you know that think magically? I know loads of them.
Well, you said earlier that it's part of, the creative process, imagination. Well, magic is a big part of that, isn't it? If you
Yes,
can't suspend your everyday life and believe in something else, then you're not able to create, I don't think.
that's right. No, I totally agree. I think it's an absolutely crucial part of um, creating the right mental ecosystem, if you like, to be able to create. But it's not you anymore.
No.
That song or that piece of art is coming to you from somewhere else, And
And that's somewhere else in my tradition. It's called Awen. Yeah.
so tell us a
Awen.
little bit about this then. Tell us a
Awen.
little bit. Yeah.
Awen is almost like divine inspiration. This is what all the Bardic tradition is about. It's about getting in touch with the Awen. It's like you say, it's not you. It comes from somewhere else. You download this more or less, and that's what everybody's seeking in my tradition. In the Bardic tradition, that is, and all our storytelling is to do with that. But the Awen, more or less, is quite specific for Bardic tradition. It's serious stuff. Yeah, it is
Yes.
serious stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You see, this is one of the things I think that if people come from something from a logical perspective, they don't take any of that type of thing seriously. And the point is that it is, as you say, it's really serious. So for instance, when I talk about songs already existing and they have a soul, they exist on their own, and they grow in the world and they manipulate. They have agency in the world.
Mm.
A lot of people look at me at first, and it's a bit like, okay. you know. And you said, well, first of all, if you think like that, that song becomes more potent anyway. You get, in other words, in your terminology, not your terminology, but rationalist terminology, you get a better song um, because you're not restricted by your own logic about
Yeah.
how the song is. But weirdly, you can point to um, lots of examples of songs that do as have done extraordinary things. You know, they obviously they're integral to a period of time, or they they mutate over time.
What's interesting with songs, you've got two components, haven't you? You've got your words and you've got your music, and both totally separately have the power to transform. Yeah.
Yes,
The recent paragraph that I've been reading in the book of Awe is about music and its transformative power, and how that, because it's trying to look at things from a scientific point of view, which I sort of admire in a way, because you're talking about something totally non-scientific. Yeah.
exactly.
But people like to have, oh yes, this has been proved and this is a fact and this and that. So anyway, go with it. And what the book says, that when you're feeling those goosebumps, when music does that to you, just music, um, that's when you expand totally from being a singular person to a mass. And that causes a shift.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. That you're sharing something outside yourself.
Yes,
And
yes,
say, like, you're in a concert somewhere and everybody gets this at the same time,
yeah.
then whoa, there is a major shift happening. There is a charge. It's a chemical thing. It's vibrational. It changes things, like you said. And then you talk about words. Well, words are my thing, nearly. I love the way my language has been formed, how words have been put together. And I know that there is magic in that. And, it's like enchantment in a way. It's like spells. People should not underestimate the power of words.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, obviously, going back to there's loads of reference points there. I mean, I quote Alan Moore quite a lot in the book, and Alan Moore's, his sort of take on magic and where it's obviously very obvious and operative in the world, but he says it tends to be like advertising and media, where you're changing people's thoughts with words and symbols. You know, so it's not a case of it's only happening in these sort of strange places. It's happening all over the place, but
Anyway,
people have blinded it to it because the power of words is so powerful. And obviously with the NLP stuff, obviously one of the cornerstones of that is hypnosis and use of language, and how you can change people's perceptions of things by use of words, and how we respond to words. And again, from a logical, literal point of view, that makes no sense. But of course, we're responding all the time because we have to open a file, don't we? As soon as you hear a sound or a word, you have to respond to that by going inside yourself to unlock something about that word.
yeah, what it means to you and what it means as a collective. And like back to the Welsh Magic Day, that's what it's called in English, but the Welsh name for the day is Dathlu Hyd a Lledrith Cymru. It's a celebration of our magic and lore, our legends, and so forth. And that is through the medium of Welsh, and that's an important element to the day. And I was asked recently, why is it important that this day is through the medium of Welsh? And apart from obvious arguments regarding principle and politics, it should be emphasized that the language itself is an integral part of the country's magic. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
We know that words are concepts and that language is formed. The way it's formed, it creates a certain mindset. And I think that mindset distinguishes nations from each other. And,
Yes.
the Welsh language is in the land, it's in our history and our mythology. And I'm talking about the names of places and people, the words, and the choice of words. They all are part of this beautiful, strong braid.
Yes. I totally agree with you about this, a language being from the land itself, not just because it's us over a period of time in a land, but the land obviously shapes the language. So a couple of things there. I mean, one of the things that's always worth bearing in mind, of course, is this thing about bird song. And if you compare birds, the same breed of bird and its song, it varies around the country. So they have their own dialect. Well, that's obviously, that speaks of the land where they
Yeah.
are. So obviously that must be true with humans as well. So the land that you're situated in will craft the sound of your language and the words and all the rest of it. And I think that because you attended one of the things that I did recently, and I played a Icaro as a shamanic song from the Amazon, and of course we don't know what they're singing about, but you can tell that there's something happening when you listen to that. And again, same thing, because those words in their tradition is gifted to them by the plant. They didn't make the song up, it was given to them. And as I said, there are lots. One of the interesting things about those Icaros is they're actually very similar to one another wherever people are on the Amazon. They've got very similar structures, which are sort of not like anything anywhere else, particularly. It's not, so I think that's important. And I did mention about this thing of biophony, the sound that we have in music that mirrors the sound in the environment around us, whether that's the sound of cicadas and frogs in Latin American music, or that sort of, the choice of instruments like Arabic music is very sort of, sounds like it's in a desert somewhere, there's a lot of wind instruments and stuff like that. And there is something in that which is really powerful. And again, once we're aware of that, like you're saying, how important Welsh is to your tradition, and and it should be in Welsh, because that is a big part of the magic itself. I think it's absolutely spot on, even if you don't understand Welsh.
Well, we don't want to exclude anybody, so there'll be in-ear translation on the day so that everybody's welcomed. And last year was the first time I held this day, and there were people there that didn't understand Welsh, and they thoroughly enjoyed being in a Welsh medium event and being able to follow. And some had their earphones one on, one off, so they could understand but still hear the magic and the musicality of the language itself. being
Yes.
spoken. Yeah.
Yes. Because I think that's the thing that, obviously we think about language as being stuff that we understand. But of course, a lot of language is not that. It's all this other stuff that goes on. And my experience of going back to the sort of Icaros, of being I was in Brazil actually, but and listening to them singing, it was having an effect, even though I didn't understand what they were singing. But it was still, I could still feel this sort of profound effect of what was happening.
Yeah.
Um, because again, it's the same thing. It's if you're part of a ceremony in a place that's not one that's familiar to you, you're still being affected by it
Oh, yeah.
deeply.
On a
Probably more so, actually, weirdly.
Yeah, on a vibrational level there.
Yes, yes, I do believe that. So I like to sort of delve back into people's pasts. So tell me a bit. I'm assuming you've always, well, this is an assumption, but growing up in a place like Wales, um, I'm sure it was always around the sort of magical aspect of and the stories and everything. Is that true?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You know, um, everybody loves a story. There are plenty of folk tales and fairy stories. We've got our own fairies called the Tylwyth Teg, which translates as the fair folk,
Yeah,
and ghost stories, of course. Yeah, we've got Welsh ghosts, Welsh mythical creatures, and of course the Mabinogi, our mythology, which had great influence on Tolkien and
yeah,
his Lord of the Rings, and he
yes,
loved the Welsh language. He did.
yes,
It's been
yeah, yeah,
quoted as such.
yeah,
And our mythology is like, wow, really amazing. I'm
mm,
so surprised that Hollywood hasn't done anything with it, to tell you the truth. And I'm sure if it wasn't that we were Welsh, they would, because I don't know, you've got history of submission, haven't you?
yes, yes.
And people thinking that we're part of England still.
Well, yes. Oh, it's a good point. I mean, speaking as somebody who grew up in Cornwall, um, yeah, because
Yeah.
The Cornish obviously think themselves very differently to.
Oh, yeah, Cornish, like the Welsh language is part of a group of six
Yeah,
sisters.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And you've
yeah,
got two lots of three sisters. And Welsh, Breton, and Cornish are
yeah,
one group. And we're
yeah.
very similar. Like I could
Yes,
understand. Yeah.
yes, yes. I mean, a lot of the Welsh place names are very similar to a lot of the Cornish place names.
Yeah.
Very similar.
Just Yeah, it's just that Breton has some SEDs and we don't have SEDs in our alphabet.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah.
so what what was the situation with the sort of education system in Wales at the time? You weren't. I'm assuming you learned. You spoke Welsh because that you were from a Welsh speaking family.
Yeah.
Yes.
Uh, Welsh speaking family, Welsh village. I did all my education through the medium of Welsh.
Oh,
I have a sister who's 4.5 years older than me. And when she went to secondary school, that's when it became a choice that you could either go to the Welsh stream or the English one.
right.
Prior to that, it was just English. Yeah.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I remember my parents thinking that it would be better that she went to the English one in case it was a disadvantage to do things with the medium of Welsh because all the books would be in English and so forth. Now, I've always had a really strong feeling for my language. So when it came time for me to come to that age of choosing which stream I'd go to, I went for the Welsh. And of course, it was no disadvantage whatsoever.
No.
and I chose to go to an university in Wales. So all my education throughout higher has been through the medium of Welsh. And the employment that I've had since then, apart from one job, has been through the medium of Welsh, and Welsh being a skill that has had advantages for me to gain employment. And this is one of the main points that I try to make young people aware of. That, you know, it's not just something you speak, it's a skill. Language is
Yes.
a skill. Yeah. And
Yes.
it's an advantageous thing to be bilingual. It's been proven that you have greater mental skills of problem solving and what have you.
Yes.
And people who are bilingual just with English and Welsh, they have gained employment outside Wales because they're bilingual, because people know that, oh no, they can switch back and forth, they can problem solve better, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That I totally agree with this, because again, I've taught a number of kids who are bilingual, in different
Yeah.
schools, and they have you could see that mentally they have a different perspective. And obviously using this, this is one of the points, isn't it, with language, where you get words in one language that there is, as you said, there's no easy translation from that word to this one. And primarily because there is something going on within the culture, maybe, of that language, which expresses and explores certain aspects of thinking or experience that another language isn't particularly good at, and vice
Yeah.
versa. And which again proves the point about what words do to
Yeah.
you, how we use them. Yeah.
And how
So
they make you see the world, isn't it? You know? And having more than one language enables you to have a different mindset. It gives you greater choice, I think,
yes,
of thoughts.
yes, yes, yeah, yeah, I agree. I mean, and actually, this is one of the biggest problems about being English, is that we're not very good with other languages, primarily because English
It's a
is used so
global,
often.
it's a global language that
It
you don't
is,
have.
yeah. I was going to say there's a sort of a lingua franca going on, which is a
Yes.
strange sort of, shouldn't be a lingua franca, should it? But you know what I mean. But I remember I was in Greece on holiday many years ago, and there was a guy who ran a little taverna that we got to know really well. And this guy used to spend 6 months of the year in the UK. He was Greek, but his wife was English, and 6 months of the year in Greece. And he could speak obviously English, Greek, Italian. Um, what was the other one? German, French, and smatterings of Nordic. A bit of Norwegian, and I said to him, was just talking to him about languages, and I said, it's actually, the English is terrible at learning other languages, and he just turned around and said, you don't need to, do you? Because the problem is, if you talk to somebody in another language, they'll speak to you back in English in a lot of cases, which is true. Um, so yeah, as I say, so that's a bit of a drawback really for us, I think, um, and because we don't, as you said, we don't get that thing of being able to really get to understand another culture. See,
Yeah.
um, and
No.
interesting, my father, because he was he was an old dad when he had me, and he'd been in the army as a professional soldier for most of his life. And of course, at that point, he'd been in Egypt, so he could speak fluent Arabic. He'd been in Nairobi for quite some time, and he could speak Swahili. And because obviously he was around during the Second World War, he could speak a bit of Italian, and he could speak a bit of German. And he used to say, it takes 6 months. As long as you're in the country and
Yeah.
living there, you can speak the language, but you've got to be there and you've got to have to use it.
Yeah, it's that submersion quality, isn't
It
it?
is.
And that's what, well, it's an hindrance sometimes for people who move to Wales and want to learn, is that, you know, you have to be proactive, you have
Yeah.
to make that effort, and
Yes.
you have to tell people, don't speak English to me, because we've been conditioned, you know,
Yeah.
still, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
really.
Yeah. Yeah. So
But it's not impossible. Yeah, but it's not.
no, but you've got, as you say, you've got to be proactive, haven't you?
Yeah, yeah, you have.
Okay, so here's something I'm quite interested in. So you were saying about the magic in the Welsh tradition with the magic, the stories, and all the rest of it. What was your first experience where you realised there was something very unusual going on magically or otherworldly? Let's just put that out, because Wales is, when I go there, and I feel like this in the wilder parts of Cornwall as well. It's like you're being watched by the landscape. Um, what sort of things have you experienced that you sort of go, yeah, okay, I get that?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned being watched. I definitely had a feeling of that. Yeah, don't
Yeah,
know by whom, but I remember he used to live in a house called Plas Derwen, and Derwen is oak tree, and there was a huge oak tree by the house, and it was covering part of the bedroom window or something and darkening the house. And my father decided to cut it, right?
right.
And this was like, oh God, no. Anyway, this happened, but something started appearing in the window
Oh,
afterwards. Yeah, there
what?
was a,
What as what? As a
as
shadow?
a a silhouette.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I thought first of all that it was condensation or something, because there wasn't any double glazing or anything in them days. And I thought, well, I'll go to school, come back, and it'll be gone. But it wasn't, and it was there for a long time. And I thought it was related to the fact that the tree had been cut down. Yeah,
Right.
but
Because I've
so
got a story like that.
really,
I've got a story like that. I don't know. I don't know if this was in the book or not, because it was one of those. I certainly did it as a podcast. Um, so when I was living in Cornwall, I must have been about, I don't know, about 9. Yeah, I was about 9, I think. And there weren't an awful lot of street lights, but there were a few, dotted down, because I lived in a vale. Um, but it wasn't really sort of around where we were, if you see what I mean. It's this sort of little road that's ran through the village. And I can remember waking up one night and there was a figure sitting in the window. So you had the window and you had the window ledge. And this little figure was sitting with his hands around his knees, like this silhouette. And I was sort of puzzled by this thing, and it didn't move. It just sat there. And I thought, well, what is it that's casting this shadow in the window? But it was there for, I don't know, a few weeks, and then it just disappeared.
yeah.
Um, but it was a silhouette of a little person, little man.
Maybe
You know,
there's a phenomena that hasn't been outed yet. The silhouette in the window.
Yeah, I know. It's sort of weird, isn't it? Because it wasn't.
Yeah.
It didn't make me frightened or anything like that.
No, it was more of a like um confusion, really. What is it? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
More than anything. Where'd it come
yeah,
from? What is it?
yeah. It was very, very interesting, and the fact that it sort of went
Mm.
sort of pointed out to the fact that it obviously wasn't just a silhouette from a
Yeah,
light,
exactly. Yeah.
um, because there was nowhere for it to. It was on the wrong side of the window for that to happen. You see what I mean?
Otherwise, it would be there all the time,
Because
wouldn't it?
otherwise it would have been the other side because the
Yeah.
road was this side. If
Yeah.
there's a street light or somebody's light from a window, it would have shone on the other side, but it wasn't.
Mm.
It was on a side that there was nothing.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting. Um, and I've sort of, I used to get a lot of stuff like that. And obviously, as a kid, you'd see things
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
all of that stuff. But yeah, it
Mm.
was it was definitely that type of thing. And people were quite, and I think this is the other thing that with like culturally, the Cornish were quite open to talking about stuff. Um, and children would say, the children I was at school with, they would talk about things that were obviously now I would understand as some sort of magical thing,
It's
certain
like a
times at
phenomena.
night looking in the mirror and all this sort of stuff. And you didn't think anything of it. It was just normal behavior, normal things that people would talk about and things that you could do, little sort of charms that you could do. So obviously
And
it was hidden in plain sight down in Cornwall then. So I think
yeah,
that's one
and
of the
likewise with us with traditions, and superstitions. Yeah, still taken as precautionary. Don't just in case. You never
yeah,
know. Could
absolutely,
be true. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? Because obviously, particularly with Cornwall, it's not very far. You're never far away from the sea there,
yeah,
and there's all that sort of uh, law of the sea and weather. That's the other
mm.
one, which I would assume it would be similar to where you are. Weather is an important aspect of.
Good grief! It's well, life dependency on it, isn't there? In
Exactly.
past times, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
and how people would have things that could influence the weather, you know, and how they could read the weather as well.
oh yeah,
That was another one I
with
think was
accuracy as well. There,
sorry
with
with
accuracy,
accuracy.
yeah,
Absolutely, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, and it's just in a way, it's just a case of being in as a resonance, isn't it, with
yeah.
with the landscape?
And
Um,
being conscious and of your surroundings and how things behave, like plants and so forth. Yeah,
yes,
and animals, what are they doing? Ah, right, they're preparing for something
yes,
great, something
yeah,
else. Yeah,
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 yeah, yeah. Okay, so another thing about the Welsh tradition, there's obviously a lot of stuff about healing
yeah,
in Wales, and lots of respect for Welsh healers,
yeah.
which is quite, and that seems to be something that um, hasn't been broken. Where it seems to have lost that edge in England. You know,
Mm.
um, is it mid five where the healers? There's a
Medvai, yeah.
yeah, mid five, yeah.
Medvai,
Uh,
the physicians of Medvai. So you had them, and they were famous, throughout Europe. It wasn't just something they did in that small hamlets in Wales. No, there was back and forth communication. We tend to think of people before aeroplanes as not being able to travel and stuff.
yeah,
God,
no,
there's always been, yeah, the
exactly,
interaction
exactly,
between countries.
exactly. Because obviously, being in Wales or being on the coast of somewhere, the great
Yeah,
byways in the past was the sea, wasn't it? So
of course. Yeah,
you
and
would you'd have a lot of visitors from all over the place.
Yeah,
I
loads of
remember
merchants stuff.
they did some sort of work down in Stonehenge with some of the remains of people that they found down there, and these people had
Oh
come
yeah,
from Europe.
yeah,
Had obviously come over for some form of healing or something.
yeah.
So I think there was a lot of traveling, and we
And
just
lots
think
of
that,
influencing on each other,
yeah,
and bringing plants over from other places,
yeah,
That happened a lot. Phoenicians did that, and then the
yes,
Romans got some stuff.
yeah, yeah,
And there was an exchange really going on for centuries, really, that people tend to forget about that.
yes. I think some of that is because it's slightly inconvenient,
Mm,
because it does a lot of it sort of destroys the narrative that we have that
yeah,
this was this and it did that, and that sort of linear type of thing where you
yeah,
can go, well, that led to this and that, because if you're interested in things like history and stuff like that, I mean, really interested in history, you realise actually it's all a bit of a mess, and
yeah.
whatever sort of line that you think it is, it's not quite as straightforward as that because it's
No,
complicated, isn't it?
yeah.
You know, and yeah. So going back to the things that you're doing now, I mean, how did you get involved in running the the sort of conferencing that you're doing now?
It wasn't happening, basically. It wasn't happening through the medium of Welsh. There are other sort of conferences or what have you about the occult. And maybe there's a Welsh speaker there or somebody mentioning something about Welsh folklore, but there wasn't an actual conference about Welsh folklore and magic
Yeah,
through the medium of Welsh. And I thought, I want to do that. I want it to happen. So I'm back to your original question of what do you do, Bet? And I said, I'd like to make things happen. It needed to be done. And I didn't know what the interest would be. I hadn't a clue. And, it was my money that was going to have it done the first time. And I thought, well, if I don't make any money, if people don't come, at least I'll have the day I want. Yeah. And,
yeah,
but it was sold out and, there were people on the waiting list and what have you. So it was brilliant to see that there is an interest in this kind of event through the medium of Welsh. And that fills my heart with joy, really, because it's about raising awareness amongst Welsh speakers who have been here all their lives that might not have had the background that I've had and know about the stories and what have you. So that they can, oh my God, we've got this. This is so wonderful. And also to welcome people from outside, like this is what's going on here. Yeah.
yeah,
So there's no need to bring other things in here, like something from Central America, or because you get that happening a bit. You've got these retreats that have other cultural backgrounds to them. Well, we've got our own, so let's just
yeah,
celebrate that. Yeah,
yeah. You see, that's a really interesting point because there's always that sort of thing. If something is sort of broken, there's a disconnect within a tradition. Then you're
yeah,
trying to work out what it is that's missing. So subsequently, you end up going off somewhere else to, because there's a mismatch. But you haven't
yeah.
got that in Wales.
No,
I don't think you've got that in Wales. I think it's you know it's pretty much got a lineage, or it appears to me. There's
yeah,
but um, it does require for you to look for it, because I mean most of those things are hidden within
yeah,
stories, aren't
yeah,
they? They're hidden within folklore. fairy tales and stuff like that, where you read them and you go, "Oh, okay, I get exactly what's going on there." But it requires you to be able to interpret a story.
Yeah.
I suppose in a way, I think in a way that's very much like any artistic endeavor, isn't it? When you're good at doing something like painting or writing a song or something, and you listen to somebody else's, you know how that is put together.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like you can see into it
Mm.
and you get what's going on.
Yeah. You
Even to the point that you
understand it.
understand the message that's sitting inside the thing.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think I haven't really thought of it that way before, but I definitely think that is the thing, isn't it? It's once you can read, but it does require you to understand it. So that's where the lineage thing, I think, is important, where you know the stories and you know what the stories are telling you.
Mm.
Because, it's like it, this might be obvious to people when they listen to it, but most stories that are, let's just, for the moment, call them mythical or legends or whatever. They're telling you something on one level.
Yeah.
The narrative is not necessarily that important, but the message that the narrative carries, it's the sort of subliminal
Oh,
stuff.
yeah.
That
And
is that
that
is the
is really true of a Mabinogi. Yeah.
yeah
Folk tales, they can be quite at a simplistic level, but they're there to entertain. They might have more, of course, yeah. But the Mabinogi, oh my God, that you could be there forever finding new things.
so
And
tell me a little bit. I know a little bit about the Mabinogi, but if you could sort of say some of the a little bit about the stories,
oh,
because there's loads of stories, aren't there?
yeah, it's impossible to try and concise
Just like
make it.
one or two little,
Oh,
just
there's
an outline,
okay.
because
There's
some people might not know
right.
what it is.
There are 4 branches to the Mabinogi, and each branch follows a set amount of characters. But within each branch, there are loads of other stories as well.
Yeah,
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 masses. And there's an importance of things happening in a year and a day. That's a concurrent
yes,
theme. Yeah,
yes,
so
yeah.
that you have a cyclical year. Really, you go through all the seasons, and that's an important part of the mythology. Phew, there's a woman that is made out of flowers, yeah,
Yeah,
called
yeah,
Blodeuwedd, and she is of nature, and she is married to Lleu Llawgyffes, who is a bit sort of, let's say, he's not the most emotional person. And she gets frustrated because she has needs and urges and, quite raw needs really that he doesn't fulfill. So she has an affair with Grandma Pepper while he's out and about hunting, whatever. And then they plan to kill Lleu. But Lleu, because Gwydion is his uncle and he's been sort of protected this, he doesn't, there's a special way that he has to be killed. And anyway, Blodeuwedd feigns concern for him about how does this happen, and lo and behold, because long story short, a spear is thrown through a hole in a rock, in a stone, and that's supposed to kill Lleu, but because of his protection, that doesn't happen, and he changes into an eagle, and a wounded eagle, and the eagle flies off. Now Gwydion is looking for him. He knows what's happened. He knows what's happened, and he's looking for Lleu everywhere, and there's no sign of him. And he asks, a farmer, have you seen or noticed anything strange? And the farmer says that, oh, there's something strange about a sow that he has. She's been behaving a bit oddly. She keeps going to this oak tree that I have and spends a lot of time there. And say, Gwydion thinks, I know. Okay, this sounds like could be it. So he follows the sow, and what's happening? Lleu's body is decomposing, so bits of meat are falling down, and that's why the sow is there troughing away, all day. So he gets Lleu, who is now an eagle but almost dead, and manages to restore him back to health. Well, Lleu in that condition in an oak tree is so symbolic. Yeah. Because the oak tree is a symbol of wisdom. So he's gone there to, digest and interpret and go into himself what's happened. Why has he landed in this situation? Where did he fail in a way, in his relationship with Blodeuwedd? So lots of things going on. Anyway, well, cutting the long story short, what happens with Blodeuwedd? She is changed into an owl. Yeah.
Yeah.
So by Gwydion, because of her deceit, what have you, so that she can never enjoy a daylight. Unfair,
Right.
I think. Yeah. But
Yeah.
but I just give you a little
Yeah.
thought of the symbolism involved. So
Yeah.
everything is there. So you can take them at face value, which is great. They are really entertaining. You can take them on a symbolic value, again, which gives you a greater depth to the understanding of everything. One essay that I had to write once was about looking at the tales from the perspective of seeing Latin art form. Latin, the swirls, the triskells, the
Yeah.
head.
Yeah.
And that really blew me because I was reading stories that I knew, but I had to think of them in a different way. And yeah, they were there. So that's another, you can go deeper and deeper and deeper. But there's stories that people knew, like, there would be cues that people would understand. Now, if they came across somewhere an animal, a white animal with pink ears and pink eyes, you knew something was about to happen, something really unearthly was about to happen. So they would know this, and they'd be the audience, they would, oh God, what's going to happen now? And lo and behold, we are introduced to Awen, maybe, the king of the underworld.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, that was great. That was brilliant. Right. Okay. Well, Bet, that was lovely, a lovely chat. And you can you give us the dates for that?
It's on the 20th of April.
20th of April.
20th April, less than a month. And tickets are going fast. So if anybody wants to come along, please do. You'd be most welcome.
So if I'll put a link on the show notes.
Right? Yeah, that would be great, because if you go to the Awen's website, all the information is there about all the speakers and the times and so forth, and tickets, of course.
Yes, absolutely. Well, that was lovely. Thanks ever so much. Don't disappear. I'll say goodbye now, but
Okay.
just makes it sound like I've edited the recording to perfection. Thanks ever so much.
Thank you. Diolch yn fawr iawn.